Again, the guys that are really into progressive overload, low volume, high intensity, most of them are in a perpetually shitty mood, to be honest. And maybe it's the compound selection because, again, the Trenbolone sandwich and the halotestin and the Superdrol and the Anadrol and all that stuff doesn't really improve your mood, so to say. Vigorous Steve here with the Vigorous Q&A for all of your Trenbolone related questions. Today's question is from Vic Lemon or Vic Lemons. Should we train according to the compounds that we are taking? There are several follow-ups to this question, but basically, should anabolic androgenic steroid users train differently for different compounds? And the short answer to that question is yes and no. It kind of depends, but it's the wrong way to approach it. You shouldn't adjust your training or change your entire training philosophy to match the performance-enhancing drugs that you're taking. That's the same idea as changing your food for the insulin that you're taking. It should be the other way around. You need to figure out which training works for you without performance-enhancing drugs. And you need to figure out which diet works for you, again, without performance-enhancing drugs in the picture. And once you solidify and figure out which training actually works for you without anything else to incentivize hypertrophy, hyperplasia, muscle growth, mineral retention, nitrogen retention, all of the good stuff associated with PEDs. Once you figure that out, then you can choose which compounds complement this uniquely individual training style of yours highly. So let's say you do a high volume training, right? You do a lot of sets, but you don't really go to failure. You do a pumping style motion. Let's say most of the sets that you're doing are about 10 reps, 12 reps, 15 reps, 20 reps even. Because of your high volume approach, besides the carbohydrates that you're going to need, maybe it's better to avoid progestogenic 19-nors like mint or Trenbolone, even though Nandrolone might be a suitable addition for joint protection from a synovial fluid perspective. Testosterone base is obviously going to be there. Maybe Boldenone is going to be beneficial because it's known to increase hematocrit. But Boldenone, unlike most dihydrotestosterone derivatives, doesn't really make you tight. It volumizes the muscle. Again, this is a little bit of anecdotal evidence from the bodybuilding community. Testosterone, Boldenone, and a low dose of Nandrolone is a combination that makes you round, stimulates your appetite, protects the joint coming from the Nandrolone and the Boldenone, and also allows you to train at a higher volume because you're not getting tight. You don't get so many metabolic waste products, which you would expect from dihydrotestosterone derivatives. Primobolan, Masteron, Winstrol, Anavar, etc., etc. It seems that those compounds are more suitable for lower rep range. Now again, the dose here is also the key. If you do a low dose of Primobolan, you might still be able to get away with that on a high volume approach. But from what I've noticed with myself and some of my clients is that a high volume approach seems to favor particular compounds over others. So in the context of a high volume approach, assuming that your carbohydrates are there, I would say a testosterone base, perhaps Boldenone on top. But then again, the evidence for kidney toxicity is there, albeit in rodent models. So keep that in mind if you do decide to go with Boldenone for your high volume training style. Test Boldenone, perhaps a low dose of Nandrolone on top for joint lubrication. And then maybe something like Turinabol, which was designed for athletes and actually has been used extensively by athletes in East Germany, albeit that most of them didn't really know they were using Turinabol. So maybe these four are beneficial in a high volume context. If you're eating a ton of carbohydrates, perhaps insulin is beneficial, maybe a low dose of growth hormone, maybe even EPO. And if you're doing a high volume approach, you want to optimize your training capacity, allow you to take care of all the metabolic waste products which are going to occur, and look into over-the-counter supplements which promote the excretion of metabolic waste products, like citrulline malate or beta-alanine, for example, or you look into sodium bicarbonate, baking soda to reduce lactic acidosis in the bloodstream when you have a lot of metabolic waste products exiting skeletal muscle into the bloodstream. There's a lot of things you can look into besides performance-enhancing drugs if you want to optimize your high-volume approach. You can look into intra-workout nutrition, again, whether that's in combination with insulin or not, or injectable carnitine, pre-workout. You have to match the performance-enhancing drugs with the training style that already worked for you without the PEDs in the picture. But on the opposite side, if you already figured out that a low-volume but high-intensity approach worked better for you, again, without performance-enhancing drugs in the picture, you get results like this drug-free, once you do go into the compound selection for a cycle, maybe then a progestogenic 19-OR in the form of Trenbolone or Ment is more suitable for you. Because again, these compounds seem to reduce your endurance, but do make you significantly stronger. And due to the central nervous system activation and the androgen burden that you get in your brain, it's much easier and much more rewarding to push to failure and beyond failure. Same for most of the dihydrotestosterone derivatives. Primo, Mastrone, Anavar, Winstrol, Superdrol, Anadrol. These compounds, in my opinion, are more suitable to be used in a low volume, high intensity setting. Now, of course, this also means that you get a lot of central nervous system stimulation, overstimulation, and fatigue because you're constantly training to failure and perhaps beyond. Again, assuming that your recovery capability is in place. Due to this central nervous system stimulation chronically, besides the performance-enhancing drugs, you have to look into the neurotransmitters and perhaps the nootropics to keep that from firing correctly. Again, if your neurotransmitters are depleted and you're not using any cognitive aids or nootropics during your workouts, it doesn't matter how much Superdrol and Trenbolone you take, you're not going to be able to contract your muscles optimally. And then you get into the state of overtraining because your central nervous system is fried. The main issue with progressive overload, low volume, high intensity, is the tremendous stress that it puts on your brain. People don't realize this, but I've noticed this myself over the last couple of years. If you follow the logbook and you always try to beat it, one more rep or an extra pound on your lift, the amount of strain that you put on your central nervous system resulting in irritability, chronic fatigue, chronic brain fog, mood changes even. Again, the guys that are really into progressive overload, low volume, high intensity, most of them are in a perpetually shitty mood, to be honest. And maybe it's a compound selection because, again, the Trenbolone sandwich and the halotestin and the Superdrol and the Anadrol and all that stuff doesn't really improve your mood, so to say. But if you're always in this fight or flight state and always trying to chase the logbook and the numbers, it does take a toll on your mood. So keep that in mind. I come from this background for the last 20 years, and now that I've taken a step back and don't take all of these sets to failure, no longer stay in a flight or fight state, and of course avoid the Trenbolone sandwich and most of the compounds which are beneficial for a low volume, high intensity approach, honestly, I feel a lot better. So take from that what you will. In the end, you have to look into your training style and then match performance enhancing drugs which complement this training style, just like you have to match the performance enhancing drugs to your nutrition. If you suffer from acid reflux and it's a chronic issue for you, Trenbolone, Anavar, and most of the orals are kind of off the menu. And that means that ultimately you have to go with the compounds that work with your foundation. And for that, you need to build your foundation first. And I know it sounds super annoying, fucking boring to talk about the foundation and training drug-free for a couple of years, but that's how you figure out what works for you without the drugs. And then you select compounds which complement your training style. Now, of course, as you get older, you might develop some injuries. You might develop a different training style because, again, it's all a learning experience for everybody and your physique changes. You get older, things that used to work no longer work. Or, again, you might have got an injury that you need to work around. Or maybe the compounds you used to take you no longer tolerate, and yet you can tolerate compounds now that you couldn't tolerate in the past. Keep on top of how your physique is changing. Match everything together. That's the fun of bodybuilding. You try to create synergy with all of them, not just the performance-enhancing drugs. Synergy with the training, the nutrition, the over-the-counter supplements, whatever else you do for anti-aging or for your overall state of well-being, reducing your stress, becoming financially secure, allowing you to afford pharmaceutical grades, picking the compounds that match everything perfectly for synergy, using low and effective dosages, albeit a multitude of different compounds that you now have experience with. 1 + 1 = 11 due to the synergy. If you figure all of that out, you can get away with a lot less, albeit that the protocol is going to be quite complicated, just like my protocol is quite complicated. And at least this way, everything that you're doing individually, uniquely for you, is perfectly matched to your DNA. That takes years to master. That doesn't happen overnight. You can hire a coach to get there faster and get what you pay for, right? There's plenty of knowledgeable coaches out there who can guide you through that journey and optimize the synergy between everything for you, allowing you to reach your goals a lot faster. And with that being said, honestly, guys, the best results I got was taking a high dose of testosterone, upwards of 2 grams per week, with growth hormone and an aromatase inhibitor. My blood work was acceptable. The results that I got in the gym were phenomenal. And whether I was doing a low volume, high intensity approach, switching that occasionally to a high volume approach, I got big, I got lean, my blood work was acceptable, my blood pressure was in range, even though the only thing I used was 5 to 10 milligrams of Cialis to control my blood pressure, but mostly use that for the pumps and the pumps, if you know what I'm saying. I didn't use Nebivolol, I didn't use ezetimibe, I didn't use most of the ancillaries which are now common use, because this, again, a couple years ago, and still my health was pretty goddamn good. So take from that what you will. Sometimes a simple approach is also a very good approach, but I'll also be the first one to say that a complicated approach is a more fun approach. I'll leave it here. Thank you guys so much for watching. You can find everything that I'm associated with down below in the YouTube description section. Have a look at some of my sponsors and affiliates. Use those discount codes so you can save yourself some money while shopping online. Follow me on Instagram and TikTok at VigorSteve. Vigorous crew, a frontal bicep for you guys. This is medium intensity and medium volume. I'm kind of figuring it out in between. Not too many sets to failure, maybe 1 or 2 per workout. A little bit more sets at the end of the workout to get a phenomenal pump, even though I'm on a ketogenic diet. But then again, I'm using insulin to shuttle some of the glucose into skeletal muscle, allowing me to still get a pump during the workouts. So even though my protocol is quite complicated, uniquely for me, it works very, very well. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.